If protection, aggressive style, and additional capability are what you want in a new bumper for your 19 to 24 Ram 1500, then Barricade has got you covered with this Extreme HD modular bumper. Not only does it have some seriously aggressive style, but it also provides you with modular capabilities to fit further accessories. But it's also going to provide you with additional protection out on the street or trail, and you get some additional lighting too. Now this is a full width front bumper, so it's going to cover the entire width of the front end, but it does cut up higher than your stock unit. Now having that bumper sit up closer to the body of the truck means you'll have a better approach angle versus stock too, and better overall ground clearance. So if you're doing some off-roading, it's a nice benefit for you to have. It also just makes the front end of the truck look that much more aggressive. Other things you'll appreciate if you're hitting the trail are the included overrider bar and this big old skid plate down here. Those work to extend the protection to the lower section of your grille and under the front side of the engine respectively. Since this is a heavy duty bumper too, you're getting a lot of impact protection, and this thing is pretty darn solid. So if you're out busting down a trail, no need to be concerned about any obstacles. Between the bumper itself, the overrider, and that skid plate, this thing can really take a beating. Now this is also modular, meaning that you've got the provisions for things like a winch mount and some other accessories should you want to add them later. Also included in the kit are these LED daytime running lights. Now these are just two LED strips that mount on either side of the bumper, and it helps add to that aggressive look. They're designed to splice into your factory harness, so they'll work seamlessly with your factory daytime running lights too. And while additional fog lights are not included in this particular setup, you do have the ability to add them as well. These front sections here can be covered by the grills that are included, or you can add in some lights in that space. So you can add a big light bar, a couple of cube lights, and you've got the ability to kind of change it up and suit your style. Now this space can also accommodate a winch mount as well, but again, that is the beauty of the modular bumper. You also get provisions here for your front parking sensors, so you can port those over easily if your truck came so equipped. Barricade also offers a matching rear bumper for this setup too, so if you'd like a complete front and rear bumper kit, we've got those available on our site too. Construction of the bumper itself speaks to that heavy-duty part of the name. Comprised entirely of 5/32 steel plating, this one is pretty darn tough. The steel is cold formed into its final shape, which means that the material hasn't been heated and subsequently weakened. Cold forming helps maintain that structural rigidity. It's capped off with Barricade's two-stage finish. First layer is an epoxy pre-coating, which is then covered with the textured black powder coat that you see here. This is going to provide you some really good corrosion resistance, and it'll be able to stand up to pretty much whatever you can throw at it. All of the bracketry is made of the same materials, same deal with the skid plate too, so everything is going to be just as sturdy. That coating also has some UV resistance properties built in, so it won't fade, and it's about 0.5 millimeter thicker than most other coatings on the market. Those lights that we were talking about earlier are again all LEDs, so they're nice and bright, and they should have a long lifespan, just like the bumper itself. Pricing comes in at about $1,200, which for a full width bumper that includes some LEDs and additional pieces, that's pretty darn good value for your money. It's one of the least expensive full width bumpers available, and it's still a nice quality item that offers you a lot of flexibility and protection for what you're paying. Installation will get a 2 out of 3 on our difficulty meter, and the job should take you around 2 hours to complete. Now this is going to be a pretty straightforward process since it is designed to be a totally bolt-on replacement for your stock bumper, so you don't have to modify anything on your truck in order to get it fitted. However, I would definitely recommend having a second set of hands with you to do this because this is heavy and fitting a bumper can be really cumbersome by yourself. So no matter how strong you are, get another set of hands, it's just going to make your life easier. You also get the wiring that you need for the lights included, and honestly running that is probably going to take you just about as much time as bolting up the bumper itself. Either way, this is certainly a project you can undertake at home, and we're going to show you the process step by step right now. So for that, let's head on out to the shop.
Tools required for this install include an impact gun, a ratchet, a clip remover tool, scissors or diagonal cutters, 10, 13, and 18 millimeter wrenches, 16, 17, and 18 millimeter ratcheting wrenches, a swivel adapter, 4 and 5 millimeter Allen sockets, the included 4 millimeter Allen wrench, an extension, 8, 10, 12, 13, 16, and 18 millimeter sockets, and a few zip ties. What's up guys? Today we're installing a front bumper on our Ram. First we're going to watch a quick uninstall video showing you how to remove your factory bumper, and then I'll meet you back here for the install.
So right off the bat here, you can see our truck is on the lift. I just wanted to say, you don't need a lift to do this. This is definitely extremely easy. We just do that to make it a little bit easier on our camera guy, make sure he can see everything and get you the information that you need to know to do this to your brand new Ram. First step though, we're gonna grab the ratchet 8mm socket. There's 5 bolts we're going to remove in the wheel well right here. We're gonna get those out of the way, and that's going to allow us to remove a plastic wheel well liner that's connected to our front bumper. So now we have those 3 out. This piece is loose on our bumper, but it's still kind of trapped in there. So there's 2 more we're gonna remove, and that should pull right out. And you can see those are slotted, so you only need to loosen them up to be able to pull that plastic piece out of the way. Now we're gonna come over to the other side and do the same thing. So once you got the driver's side plastic removed, we can move on to the next step. And that's gonna be this master wiring harness. We gotta disconnect that, and that'll unplug all the electronics on our bumper. First thing we're gonna do is move this switch from that position right there to the open position, and that will allow us to pop open this clamp right here, like so. And then if we just keep going with that, it should push the plug apart. Now, next up, we could actually move underneath the bumper here and disconnect this thing from the frame. There's 3 18mm nuts that hold this thing on. The one that I have the wrench on right now is a little bit tough to get to with the impact gun, so ratcheting wrench it is, but the other 2 aren't so bad, so we should be able to get into those with the socket and extension to remove them, and then we're gonna do the same thing for the other side. And just like the other side, we're gonna start at the top with the ratcheting wrench, then move to the impact for the last 2. Now we're gonna remove the 2 bolts on the outside. This is the last thing holding on our bumper, so you wanna make sure you have a good handle on it before you remove these. Now this bumper is loose, so we're just gonna pull it straight back and off the truck.
So now that we have our factory bumper removed, we're ready to start assembling our new one. Now out of the box, you're gonna have the side pieces of the bumper folded in. So we need to fold those out and then tighten down some hardware to tighten it down. So now for the 2 holes here, we have an M10 by 30 bolt with a lock washer and flat washer. Thread those into both holes. And now I like to fully tighten these down before I tighten down the hinge here. So take a 16mm socket to tighten them down. And then I'm going to grab a 16mm ratcheting wrench on the bolt side and a 17mm ratcheting wrench on the nut side and tighten these down. And then flip them around and get the other side. And then repeat that same process on the other side. Next, we're going to install our upper fill panel. We're going to be using these 3 holes. We have a bolt with a flat washer coming down from the top, and then we'll have a flat washer and a lock nut on the other side. Slide that bolt through. Get your flat washer and your lock nut, and then just work your way down. And then we're going to take a 4mm Allen socket on the bolt side and a 10mm wrench on the nut side and tighten all these down. Now next we're going to install our grills in the center. Now if you have a light bar that you want to install, you can use the bracket that works best for you, and you can mount them on down here to the slotted portion. Now we don't have a light bar included in this kit, so I'm going to be dropping the grills in. So I have one for the center and then one for each side here. Now to bolt this down, we're going to be using our 4mm button head combo bolts and our nut. I'm going to go from the inside with the bolt and then get my nut on the tighter to access side. That way we just have to get a wrench on that. Just do that for all 10 of your holes, and then we'll tighten it down with a 4mm Allen socket and 10mm wrench. And then just make sure that your grills are centered up, and then you can go ahead and tighten them down. I like to start in the middle and work my way out with these. Next we can install our main hoop. So you're going to take a 5mm Allen bolt with flat washer, put that through the top hole. Now on the bottom side I've got a second flat washer, and then I've got a lock washer, and then our nut. Same thing for the other hole. And then once you have that in place, take a 5mm Allen socket and a 13mm wrench, tighten that down. Now for the second one, we can't get our socket in there without having it on an angle, so I'm using the 5mm Allen wrench included in the kit and a 13mm socket on the nut. And then do that same thing on the other side. So now onto our parking sensor holes. We don't have any parking sensors in our factory bumper. If you have them in yours, pop them out and you would throw them in here. And once we're done with this, I'll flip it over and show you how that would go. For us, since we don't have them, we're gonna be using these caps. So you're just gonna line it up with the hole and then just press it in. And then you can do that same exact thing for the other 5 on this bumper. Now on the other side, if you do have parking sensors, there's going to be a little rubber ring that you're going to have to pull off of the tip. You're going to be replacing that with this foam washer. So you'll pop that onto your sensor, drop your sensor down into place. And then on top of it, you're going to put this foam spacer. And then lastly, you have your cap. These 2 sides are going to slide into those slots. They'll slide on just like that once you press it down to hold your parking sensor into place. Next, we're going to install our license plate bracket onto these 2 holes at the bottom. I've got an impact gun sitting under the bumper just to prop it up enough for me to line up my holes. And then I'm taking a 4mm Allen bolt with a flat washer, sliding that through. And then I've got another flat washer and a lock nut for the other side. Do the same thing on this side. And now we're just going to take a 4mm Allen socket and a 10mm wrench and tighten this down. And then just get your bracket straightened out and do the same thing on the other side. Next we can install our mounting brackets. Now this is going to be stamped with a D or a P for driver or passenger. We're on the driver's side here. So we're going to slide this on the inside of this joint. And then we have M10 bolts with lock washers and flat washers. The very top one is getting a nut on the back side, and these bottom two are getting this double nut plate. Just get that lined up. Throw one of your bolts through, and then reach around the other side with the nut plate. Thread your bolt into that nut plate. Do the same thing with your other bolt. Now for our top hole, we're going to be doing the same thing, except we have an actual nut for the back side. Now it's very tight back here, so just try to get the bolt as tight as you can so that you can hit the bolt with an impact gun and not have to hold the nut, because it is very, very tight back here. Just tighten that down as much as you can by hand, and then grab your 16mm socket and tighten all three of those down. And that one did get fully tight, so we don't have to worry about getting a wrench back there. Once you're done with one side, do the same thing on the other. So now that we have our bumper fully assembled, we're gonna get our wiring situated before we get that on the truck. I've got this laid out kind of how it's gonna go. I've got our switch over here that we're gonna be running through the firewall and into the cabin. I've got our two connectors for our lights that we're gonna drop down right in between the battery and the fuse box here towards the floor, and then we can route it underneath. And then finally, we've got our two battery terminal connectors hanging out right next to the battery. So now I'm going to start off by running our switch into the cabin. Now there's a grommet way down here, kind of diagonally down from our brake booster, that I'm going to run it through. It's going to be impossible to get a camera angle of that. You can kind of see it from right here. So I'm just going to go down and push this through that grommet. And I'm just going to feed as much through as I can for now, and then we'll go into the cabin later and mount up our switch. Next, I'm going to grab the two connectors for our light. Now I've got a gap here between the battery tray and these wires going into the fuse box. I'm just going to drop it right down through there. And then once we get our bumper mounted up, we'll route this how it makes sense to. And then that'll leave us with our battery terminals. Now before we hook that up, I'm gonna pop the cap off of this inline fuse and just pull the fuse out so we don't have any power going to our harness before we get everything set up. And now we're ready to hook up our battery terminal connectors. I'm gonna start off with the positive here, taking a 12mm socket to remove this nut. And then I'll take my positive, slide that on, and thread that nut back on, tighten it down with a 12mm socket. And then I'm going to switch to my 10mm socket to do the same thing on the negative side. Slide that connector on, thread on your nut, tighten it down with a 10mm socket. Now, if your truck is equipped with an air dam, you are going to have to remove this to install the skid plate. So you can either not run the skid plate or not run the air dam. For us, we're just going to remove our air dam. We've got one connector back here and then four 13mm bolts that we can remove and pull this out. So now we just have our one connector right here, and then we are gonna have to pop out this push clip as well. So I'm gonna start with that with a clip remover tool. Pop that out, and then we've got a tab that we can press in on our connector and pop that off. And now we'll just remove those 4 nuts and pull this thing out of here. So now we're just down to our 2 nuts on each side. I've already pulled the nuts off the other side. So now I'm just gonna get a hand on this and take these last 2 out. Now with all of our nuts removed, we can just pull this straight off. Now in that place, we're gonna install our skid plate brackets. So it's just gonna slide over like that. Same thing as before, this is stamped with a D or a P for driver or passenger. We're on the passenger side, so I've got the one with the P. And then we're gonna put a flat washer and a lock nut onto each stud. And then we're just gonna hold this level and take a 13mm socket, tighten that down. And then do that same thing on the other side. So now I've got my buddy to help me lift this up, get it lined up so we can install our hardware. We've got our M12 bolt with a flat washer going from the front to the back. And then we've got a flat washer, a lock washer, and a nut going on the opposite side. So now we're gonna go back and take an 18mm socket and wrench to tighten all 3 of these bolts down. For this top one, we're probably gonna need a ratcheting wrench. I don't think I'm gonna be able to fit my socket in there. And I'm just gonna tighten this last one up as much as I can by hand, and then get an 18mm wrench and ratcheting wrench on there. And then repeat that same process on the other side. So now we can go ahead and connect those wires on our harness to our fog lights here. Now in the mounting brackets that mount up to the frame horn, we do have a hole to pass this wire through. So I'm just gonna go right through that hole to bring it into the middle here. I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. And then I'm gonna take my 2 wires that I ran down from the engine bay and go over the frame rail. I'll get these untwisted. I'll leave one on the driver's side. I'll plug in my one on the passenger side here. Press it in until you hear that click. And then we're just gonna be bunching up all of this wire, and I'm gonna zip tie it inside the bumper where we would mount the brackets for our light bar. But you can run this however you'd like, however you can get it clean. So now I'm just gonna bunch up my wires, running them down towards these brackets. I'm gonna get one bunch of it and put a zip tie there. I'm tucking that underneath the lip here so that you won't see it through the grill. And then take a pair of scissors or diagonal cutters, cut off the excess of that zip tie. And then we'll just do that same thing over here. Bunch up what we have remaining. Grab my zip tie. Just tuck it under that lip, tighten it down, and cut your excess. So now we're ready to install our skid plate. We've got one side of it with 4 holes that are gonna line up to these 4 holes. This is gonna slide on the inside of the bumper here, and we're gonna thread an Allen head bolt with a lock washer and flat washer through this hole and into the threaded hole in the skid plate. I'm going to slide that in first and grab a bolt. I'm going to get my 4 bolts up front threaded in first, and then I'll work on the 2 in the back for the brackets. Now in the back for the brackets, we're using that same bolt with a flat washer. And then we've got another flat washer and a lock nut on the other side. And then we're going to do that same thing on the other hole and on the other side as well. So now we're going to start tightening everything down. For the 4 up front, you just need a 5mm Allen socket. For the ones in the rear, you're also going to need a 13mm wrench. Next, we can press in the clips for the screws for the license plate. Just line it up with the hole and press it in. So now inside the cabin, I've grabbed our switch off the floor. You can mount this wherever you'd like. I'm just gonna mount it right down here, and then we have this panel here that we can tuck all of our excess wire behind to keep it out of the way. So remove the backing on the double-sided tape. Stick that down where you want it. And then we can run this wire back, tuck it behind this panel. And I'll keep it nice and out of the way from our brake and our gas pedal. So now the last thing we need to do is come back to our engine bay. We've got all of the excess wire from our switch that we need to zip tie, and we can tuck right back here into the battery tray. And then we just need to reinstall our inline fuse, and that'll give power to our lights. So I'm just going to bunch up all of this excess wire and then throw a zip tie on there. And I'm going to trim that zip tie and then just tuck that right at the side of the battery here, nice and out of the way. And then we'll pop this cover for our inline fuse, press our fuse into place, close that up, and tuck it out of the way. So that'll wrap up this review and install of the Barricade Extreme HD modular front bumper with LED DRL, skid plate, and overrider hoop for your 19 to 24 Ram 1500, excluding the Rebel and TRX. Thank you for watching, and for all things Ram, keep it right here at AmericanTrucks.com.